Good afternoon, welcome back. So today's video is following from the other ones. I'm going to give you a bit of a tour of the brewery, or the garage as it currently is, the state it's in, and outline a lot of the projects that I need to tackle in the coming months, all of which I will feature on the channel in a hope that they'll prove useful to other people. There's quite a bit to look at. I may do this in one go, I may do this in several videos. Let's see how it goes. So anyway, I'm going to flip you around and we're going to go in and we'll have a look. So here we are. This is the brewery as it currently is. As you can see, there's quite a bit of kit in there already. So we'll start at this end and I'll go through what I've got, what is going to change, what needs working on, what is kind of up in the air, and what might happen in the future. So if we go just over here, you see I've already got a bit of a stainless steel thing going on here. So we've got a double sink over there, which we'll get to in a minute, and then we've got a general storage table here. On top there is my little 7-gallon SS Brewtech, which is used primarily for my homebrew, and sack trolley, obviously quite useful, lugging stuff around. First job worth noting is the floor. It's getting a bit tired and it needs a bit of a recoat. So before the weather gets a bit too cold, and while the temperatures are quite ambient, around about 20 degrees, I'm going to take advantage and try and strip everything out of here and give this flooring a bit of a recoat. So on this bench here, there's a little 7-gallon, fantastic little fermenter. Never had any issues with it, works perfectly. Little box of electrical stuff here, which is what I'm currently using to build these control boxes you see here. We'll go through that in another video, which we'll cover. And then below that is a little Maxi T10 that I've picked up. I'll tell you what that's for in a bit. We'll get around to that. Just around the entrance of the garage here, one of the issues I've got here, as you can see, we get a lot, because it's a corner and there are some big concrete trees around here, we get a lot of leaves blowing in and a lot of feathers from where the cats have killed the pigeons and whatever. And it always tends to come in, so this little bit of wood here is just at the moment stopping anything coming to the garage door. But what I will do is I'll fit some kind of skirt to the bottom of the garage door just to stop that happening in future. So let's just flip over to this side. A couple of bits of storage on top there, a couple of buckets. That's a bit of trash that's got to go out. There's a bottle tray, and on the wall there is my 2-stage filter, which is fine, works fine, but I'm considering changing that at some point in the future for a RO system, but it'll depend largely on whether or not I can find somewhere to store all the wastewater, because future plans might involve quite a bit of wastewater, and with this being a garage there's a bit of restricted space, so we're going to have to look at that. I'm quite keen to use an RO filter for the prime reason that the water here is incredibly hard, and as hard as I've tried to make good IPAs and things like that, they're never quite as good as they could be. Great if you're doing dark beers, stouts, winter beers, things like that, never really any issues. But as soon as you try to get any hop character, or even anything like trying to do a NEPA for instance, it's never going to be quite as good as it could be. So my thought is to go to a RO system where I can build the water profile from scratch. That will open up lots of different avenues, particularly when I go commercial. Because one of the things I want to look at in the future is doing some interesting lagers. Now the water here is absolutely no good for lager. Not of the type that I want to do. I want to do some interesting German style lagers. One of my particular favourites. So I think I need to get my water right before I do that. Yeah, I could add salts, and I have tried that in the past. but it just never seems to quite work just as I want it. There's always something lacking, there's always something just missing. So I think possibly going RO might be the way to go. But like I say, my big concern is how to manage all the wastewater. I don't really want to chuck it away. I want to make use of it. I'm not on a meter, but that's not the point. I think if I'm going to use that amount of volume of liquid at a ratio 3 or 4 to 1, I want to make sure that I can recover it and reuse it for cleaning purposes or whatever I need it for. So that's definitely a consideration. Now if we just pan down here a bit, you'll see just down here, maybe if I walk outside, you'll get a better idea. But down here, I've got a 400 litre pot from Brew with TC clamps. Sorry, TC ports on, and I've got a plan for that, and I'll tell you about that when we get further into the garage and I'll show you what's going on. So just going back in, on the left here I've got 2 fermentation fridges. You can see here, not really doing much at the moment, not brewing much at the moment. This one is being used to store some Oktoberfest beers for the Perfect Draft, which I must say are absolutely fantastic. So they're going to be staying there nice and cool, and they'll probably be in there till Christmas when they'll get cracked out for the festivities. But these fridges are all linked up to Inkbirds, wireless Inkbirds 308s, and they've got tube heaters in, little shelf at the bottom to stand the fermenter on, and obviously the shelves for when I put any bottled product in there and keep that in storage. And we've got another one over here. If we just go up here, we've got a bottle filler, which is pretty good. We'll get used to using that at some point. I had a hell of a job getting, when I picked this up, the seals on the inside, the rubber seals, silicone seals on the inside, were all perished, and it took me an absolute age to find replacements. So if any of you that are out there that have got these and you're in the same position, I'll try and dig out where I got them from, because it did take me quite a while to find them and to get them here. But they are out there and you can find them. So just over here we've got another fridge, which is just general storage. So the top part is handy for keeping beer in, chemicals, whatever that needs to be cold, and the bottom half is a freezer, which is the hop storage. So just spinning around again, let's have a look over here. Quite handily, when we bought the house, we put the boiler in here, into the garage, which, as a matter of fortune, gave us a handy place to pull all the services out so the sink can have running hot water and cold water. These bits on here, we'll get back to in a minute, I'll tell you what they're for. And just down here, there's a 100 litre pot, Brew Builder, with tri-clamps. And there's a little, I think it's a 36 litre pot, which I got from a Dexa, a catering supplier, which I converted into a brew pot. I use that on my induction hob. It's a fantastic little pot, and when you use it on the Buffalo induction hob, it works absolutely brilliantly. Just over here we've got a Maxi 310. I'll tell you where that's going in a minute. And similarly, up here we've got another Maxi 310 sitting underneath my little Bluetooth speaker. If I just have a look up, you can see there's various bits of storage up here, which is going to get cleared out over time. I may use that for storage, I may not, I haven't decided yet, because I do have other options for storage. Again, kitted out with shelves along the wall here. It's handy to have things off the floor at a height, so what we've got up here is kind of bottle can storage across the top, and then various bits and pieces, chemicals, spare parts, grinding mill for, a pestle and mortar for grinding up tablets if I need to, Protofloc, stuff like, well not Protofloc, Camden tablets, and various other things in there, measuring equipment, filters. And we'll get over here, we'll look at the main brewing part of the garage. So here we've got two 100 litre pots, which combined with the other one down here just spin around. There is my 3-pot system. Now this was going to be the original basis of the brewery, but things have changed now, and we'll come to that in a second. So the plan was to brew on a 100 litre system, and to go mainly into bottle, possibly into the odd cask, and supply bottle shops. But over the past couple of years, I've kind of rethought that plan, just because of the amount of sheer hard work it is to get what is a comparatively little amount of product out of it. So my thought always was that it would have to be upscaled at some point. So do I do it now, or do I get started on the 100 litre pots and let it grow organically, or do I just go for something that's going to be more productive in terms of time versus volume, and then go from there, knowing full well that I am limited for space in this garage and I can only go so big. But anyway, so what we have here is the boil kettle. This one just here. On top is one of the old control boxes I built. That is no longer going to be used, but the fixings, the commando plugs, are going to come off that, and they're going to go into the control box I showed you earlier. Here's the mash tun. We've got a sight glass on the side there with a temperature probe on top, so I can throttle that with the pump and I can manage the temperature going in. We'll just have a quick look inside. And as you can see in there, we've got a false bottom and we've got a Vola farm. So that's going to be quite handy. And in the bottom of these lids here, I've built an attachment that allows me to put on a spray ball, which I will use as a sparge, which works pretty well. In terms of managing steam and controlling that and the environment in here, I installed this vent system here, which gives me the option to move the pots around and put a vent over whichever pot happens to be producing the most amount of steam. I've had a bit of a rethink about this. Yeah, it works, but I'm not really keen on the idea of having all that water sitting in those pipes that could possibly go mouldy, just come back down the pipe, drop into the beer. It just doesn't sound right. So the chances are that's going to come out. But what I might do is use the same port, go out through the wall and put a condenser and take the condenser outside, and then I can just let the condensed water run out onto the area outside, which I'll show you in a little while. I think that's a more sensible option. I think it'll help me manage the environment in here, because when you're brewing in here it does get pretty hot. Even though there's quite a bit of void up there, I really don't want that much moisture hanging around in here, because I don't want to cause any issues with the wooden structure or anything dripping from the coverings up above. So let's just move along. What you see here is my bright tank, and that's there not to go with this system primarily, but we'll come back to that in a minute. I'll tell you about that in a minute. We've got some storage of spare parts here, you'll see. So we've got lots of spare tri-clamps, various fittings in there. Fittings in there as well, general water fittings, seals, etc., things like that. And there's another one that goes in here which is full of switches, electronic gear, which is currently being used elsewhere. There's one of the little brew pumps, got 2 of those, they're pretty good, but I think I'm going to scale those up at some point. They'll still be useful, I'll still have a use for those elsewhere. Quite what yet, I don't know, we'll get to that. But let's just swing around, let's see what we have here. So we've got 2 fermenters here, so before I get to that, there, and I'm sure you're all familiar with this kind of setup, there's my original cool box from when I first started homebrewing, which was, what, crikey, probably back 20 odd years ago. That still gets used and it still performs well. I'll just pull that out so you can have a look at what's inside. But what I actually made for this, which works brilliantly, if I can get that out of there, is I made myself a false bottom and a bit of perforated stainless. It works fantastic. It means I can underlet through this, which is brilliant, and it prevents virtually zero grain getting through, so the wort that comes out is crystal clear. So anybody got issues with filtration in this kind of setup, that's a pretty good way to go forward. So back to the two fermenters. These are Blickmans, 120 litres. Picked these up a little while ago from Moog Brew down south. These are going to be were going to be the two main fermenters, probably are still going to be the two main fermenters. So 120 litres each. I've done a bit of work on these. You see that plug hanging out there. I fitted these with heating nets, and I've also refitted these with the thermal well that goes in here and a cooling coil that goes in here, and those are the bits that are on the sink over here. So these are the cooling coils that sit underneath the lid, and these are the thermal wells that drop in to the beer, which worked out brilliantly. It took me a while to find these extra long thermal wells, I must admit, but they sit at just the right point. So when the beer's full, when the fermenters are full, those thermal wells are about 2/3 submerged into the beer. It means that I don't have to have any extra holes through the side of the pot to allow for those to go in. I can just use the existing setup, which I'm in the process of changing over to tri-clamp fittings. They're currently still sitting where their original Blickman fittings on, but I will change those to tri-clamps. And on the side here, my little sports bottles, those are my blow-off bottles. So those have been fitted on. And again, they work quite well. They're not bad. There's the plate chiller there, which I use on the system. So swinging back around this way, just tucked in there is my little Buffalo unit, fire extinguisher if ever I need it. Down here, I've got two 200 litre pots. Now this is where the 400 litre pot comes in. So when I was talking earlier about possibly upscaling from 100, this was the plan, was to use this 400 litre as a HLT, which I was going to put in that corner on a stand and use gravity to feed into the mash tun. So all this bench that you see here, that's going to come out and be used elsewhere. The pots are going to go down to the ground, and I'm going to put them on blocks. So they're about 300, 400 mil off the ground. The reason I'm doing that is that I can just lift the pots up, move the blocks, and thoroughly clean the floor, because what I don't have in here, which I'm looking at, is a floor drain. Because to do that requires quite a bit of digging to get it in place. And the only option I've got really is to run it along this back wall and to go out and into the main house drain, which is something I'm considering, and I may do it yet, and I may do it soon, because as things are developing, I'm trying to come up with a list of priorities, and that is kind of making its way to the top of the pile. Yeah, I could do it later, and I could live with just mopping and squeegeeing the floor, but I might be creating more work for myself, and it might be better to put a drain in. So we'll have a think about that one. But so going back to this, yep, HLT, 400 litre, gravity fed into the mash tun, which is, as you can see there, it's the Brew Builder Thermopot, which will give me about, I reckon, the stats are about, it gives me about 160 odd litre capacity. And then going into a 200 litre kettle here, which again is another Brew Builder with tri-clamp. as part of the main system. So we'd have HLT in the corner, mash tun, 200 litre kettle. That would give me, I reckon, maybe 85 to 90 litres a shot if I'm lucky, which I could then split into the two fermenters. And I could either run the same beer, or I could split the hop regime, split the fermentation regime, and produce two slightly different beers from the same base wort. That is on the plans. We'll see how that pans out. Sink here, handy little spray, but I'm going to change all this. Works quite well, but I need something that's got a bit more reach. Incidentally, that's what that little pipe there is. That allows me to connect a hose, which you see down there. So I can use that to reach over and clean out the pots over here, which works pretty well. Little wet and dry vac down there, which is handy. And of course, the obligatory brewery seat, which I'll be spending quite a bit of time in when I'm waiting for stuff to happen and I haven't got things to do. We'll see how that pans out, eh? So, as you can see, there's quite a lot in here. There's quite a bit that's going to change, and there's not a lot of space. So when I come to think about where's all the bottling and all the cask and all that stuff going to happen, that's a real bit of a headache. So with that in mind, this is what I've done outside, which will come into use. So what we have here is a 12 by 10 shed, which I'm primarily going to use for storage. So that's going to be grain store, equipment store, chemicals, everything like that doesn't need to be necessarily in the brewery, which will mean that the brewery, with all the fridges gone, I can run the brewery down that single line to the door. And this can be the wet area, and this can be the dry area. And down the side here is where I intend to keep any empty casks. They can just be stacked up there against the wall. Needs a bit of a tidy up, in the process of doing that. And then just out here is where I'll do the cask washing, because that runoff can go into the drain just down here, which I'll clean out in due course. So just go and have a look in here, and you'll see how much space I've got. It's a bit of a mess in here at the moment, but you get the idea. So the bench that's in the garage at the moment is going to go along that back corner. The fridge is going to go along this side wall here. I'll run some electrical feed, put some lighting in. We'll put a floor down. We'll possibly insulate at some point, but the cost of doing that is quite horrendous. The bikes, I don't know what to do about those yet, because I might need the space. We might have to find another solution for those. We'll see how that goes. Might be usable for the time being, because the only things I'm going to do in here is storage, really. And the workbench over there is any projects that are in the brewery will be done over there. So that's the plan in there. We just go back into the brewery garage, whichever you want to call it, and I'll have a sit on the obligatory brewery seat. We'll have another look around. You can see up there, there's the storage. My old motorbike helmets, which will be going. Happy to give those to a good home, just let me know. They're all XL sizes. Pretty good nick. They've got comms fitted in, but they're probably not relevant up-to-date technology. But I have no further use for them. So they're either going to go in the tip or they're going to go on Freebay. But if anybody's got any interest in them, just let me know. I can't remember the makes of them, but I know one of them's a Momo, which is that one at the front there, and then the one at the back is a K-Berg with the built-in visor. So if you want to come and collect these, you're welcome to them. I'm certainly not going to post them out. I'm not going to spend money to post them out. They're here for free if you want them. So just going back to what's going to happen in here, quite a lot of projects. I'm going to produce a job list. I'm going to try and do some kind of critical path of what needs to happen. There's possibly going to be yeah, I don't know what happened there. For some reason it just cut out. Sorry about that. I'll look into that and see what happened. But anyway, it gave me a chance to look back and review what I haven't told you. There's a couple of things I didn't tell you, and that's where I'm going to use the chillers. So the two Maxi 310s that I showed you, they're going to be used on the fermenters here. So each fermenter will get a dedicated Maxi 310. And the other chiller, the 210 that I picked up, which is over there on the bench, that's going to be dedicated to the bright tank. And the bright tank I'm going to use to carbonate and drop clear anything that's going into bottle or can. And canning is definitely something that's on the cards for the future. I'm just looking into that now to see which way I'm going to go with it. There's obviously a couple of different options. Most people seem to be going for cannula with good degrees of success and perhaps some frustration. We'll see how that one pans out. But apart from that, I don't think there's much else I can tell you about what's going to happen here. There may be some big changes coming ahead in the future. That's currently under discussion. If that comes off, it's going to shake everything up in here, and it's going to make for quite an interesting journey and a lot of potential changes over what have already been fairly well established plans. But in any case, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you're going to come along for the next ones. If you have enjoyed it, please like, please share, please subscribe. And if there's any comments you want to add or any questions, just drop me a comment in the comments box and I'll respond to all the comments I receive. Catch you all later. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.